Welcome back to Reddit Echoes, the channel where real-life stories unfold with surprising twists, deep emotions, and moments you won't be able to look away from. In today's video, I'll share with you a story about an arrogant neighbor who caused quite a bit of trouble in a peaceful neighborhood and how the protagonist delivered an unbeatable comeback. Have you ever dealt with a difficult neighbor? Someone whose small actions affect the whole community, and what happens when patience is pushed to its limit? Let's follow this story together because it's not just a battle over parking spots, but also a lesson in perseverance, justice, and the power of the law when it's applied right. Now let's dive into this dramatic and somewhat humorous tale. Story 1. An unexpected confrontation with the substitute teacher. I'm a 17-year-old boy born deaf in a normal family, and I've always had to use a cochlear implant to hear at school, or when communicating with hearing friends. Everything was normal until one day when my homeroom teacher was on leave and a substitute teacher was assigned. That day I wore a beanie to keep warm, which nearly covered the transmitter part of my cochlear implant. I knew this but didn't think anything would happen. However, the substitute teacher, Ms. Karen, couldn't tolerate it. She knew nothing about cochlear implants and thought I was using a banned music device in class. She started pressuring me, demanding that I remove the implant immediately or face a disciplinary report. I explained that it wasn't headphones, but a device that helped me hear voices, even took off my beanie to prove it. But she didn't believe me and even tried to grab and remove my implant. I got scared, quickly pushed her hand away, and loudly told her she had no right to touch my medical device. I thought it was over, but no, she came back and actually took my implant away. I had no choice but to stand up and shout, demanding it back and threatening to report her. In panic, I grabbed her hand to pull it back even though I knew I shouldn't. In the end, she called the principal to settle the matter. I tried to explain, but the principal said I was wrong for acting against a school staff member. I was suspended for a while my dad was furious and threatened to sue the substitute teacher for assault and theft of personal property. My story isn't just a small quarrel, it's about the right to live and learn normally, about respecting people with disabilities. I share this story not only to condemn the teacher's behavior, but also to remind everyone, especially teachers, to understand and respect students with special circumstances. Because even small details like this can hurt someone for life. Story 2. Abandoned by my fiancé and my sweet revenge. I'm 26 years old and I was engaged to my girlfriend for almost 4 years. We got engaged last year and were planning our wedding. I thought everything would go smoothly, but life hit me hard when she got a new job in another city and we had to move there together. At first, I really wasn't happy. I had to quit my old job, leave my family and close friends, and step into a new environment I didn't know. I was frustrated and grumpy throughout the moving process. She was excited about her new job, but I just felt abandoned. What annoyed me the most was this new colleague she kept mentioning, a confident, arrogant, artsy-looking guy. I couldn't stand how he interacted with my girlfriend. Every time he showed up at after-work gatherings, they seemed too close, making me suspicious. We started arguing more and more about this. I told her straight up I didn't like that guy and he made me uncomfortable, but she just smiled it off, calling me jealous for no reason. One Tuesday night, she came home very late. She sat down and told me something I couldn't believe: she wanted to break up. She admitted there was a strong connection between her and that guy, stronger than anything she'd ever felt with me. I still remember how it felt like someone stabbed me right in the heart when she said that. I spent the whole night on the sofa feeling beaten to the core. I couldn't sleep, tears kept flowing until morning. Everything seemed to collapse, but I wasn't going to give up. In despair, I decided to plan my revenge. I knew she was happy with that guy, but I would make sure he knew she wasn't the only prize in life. I found out that guy was also using a dating app, Tinder, so I connected with him secretly without her knowing. We started chatting like new friends. He had no idea who I was. I gathered courage and asked him out for coffee, then gradually arranged more meetups. Meanwhile, I contacted one of her ex-boyfriends, a man who had broken up with her because he was openly gay. The three of us schemed together. One day, I proposed a threesome with him and the gay ex. Surprisingly, he agreed without suspicion. The three of us had a fun time, and importantly, he started to develop feelings for me. Eventually, I told him I didn't want to be the other woman anymore and forced him to choose either break up with her or I'd end things with him. Of course, I knew this was a strategic move, but I wanted to control the situation. The result, he broke up with her, abandoned her, and kicked her out. She lost both her boyfriend and home while I felt an indescribable satisfaction. She called and messaged me with crying emojis, apologies, and regrets, but I ignored her. I even told her mother, who didn't support her after learning the truth. I knew her life wouldn't be easy anymore. After everything, I also broke up with that guy because he wasn't honest either. I started a new life with the gay ex, the one I truly loved. I'm proud of what I did because it wasn't just revenge, but reclaiming respect for myself. Life isn't fair, but at least I did something to protect myself. Story 3. The Fateful Night and a Life Stolen. I'm a special education teacher, and this story happened a few years ago when I started my first job in special education at a school in the U.S. I taught a kindergarten student named Jay. Jay was not like other kids. He exhibited dangerous behaviors such as running away from school and roaming the nearby neighborhood. I can't describe the fear and anxiety I felt when he ran out of class once without anyone catching him in time. I tried to convince the administration that Jay needed one-on-one support, a dedicated aide to ensure his safety. I presented data and thorough documentation, and finally the supervisor agreed to start the process for assigning an aide. But the procedure became a major obstacle. I had to rely on the supervisor, Mr. Khalil, to complete and approve the paperwork. Time dragged on. I had to keep following up repeatedly via emails and calls. Then Mr. Khalil suddenly vanished. He stopped responding to messages, didn't answer calls, and gave no updates even though the deadline was near. I felt extremely stressed and pressured with the application stalled while Jay's situation grew more dangerous. After many fruitless attempts, I forwarded all the evidence, emails, messages, and Mr. Khalil's silence to the higher management, Mr. Bailey, head of special education. Within days, Mr. Khalil received an official apology letter from the board and was dismissed from his supervisory role. I felt justice had been partially served. But the story didn't end there. Colleagues and I knew Mr. Khalil had a terrible attitude and probably made things difficult for more than just me. I received many shared stories from others about his behavior. I realized that fighting for the rights of a special child like Jay wasn't easy, and the irresponsibility of a leader like Mr. Khalil could have serious consequences. But I also knew if I hadn't stood up and spoken out, no one else would do it for me. Looking back now, I'm proud I didn't give up, that I dared to speak out to protect children like Jay, those lives truly in need of care and support. Story 4. The War with a Nasty Neighbor and the Parking Dispute. Hello everyone, I'm a resident of a small, quiet neighborhood with about 20 houses. Each house has a spacious yard and plenty of parking space, and there had never been any disputes about parking for many years. However, things started to change about a month ago when a neighbor at the end of the street began parking daily and overnight right in the middle of the road in front of my house and others. At first, I thought maybe she was fixing something at home or trying to avoid car exhaust, so I didn't say anything. But after 5 consecutive nights, I started to get annoyed. The road in front of my house was blocked, the lawn care staff couldn't do their job, and deliveries were delayed because vehicles couldn't get through. I left a note reminding her that although the street is public parking that obstructs the community's activities isn't acceptable, and asked her to move her car. The next day, the note disappeared, but the car remained. Another neighbor warned me that she was very upset and started yelling at me for leaving the note. I tried to avoid conflict, but when her car was parked there again, I decided to park my own car in that spot to emphasize the message. She became very angry, repeatedly giving rude gestures and leaving obscene, challenging notes on my car. After a bit of investigation, I discovered that this neighbor had been illegally renting out her house on Airbnb for nearly half a decade. That explained why strange cars frequently parked there and why she acted so hostile. I reported this to the local authorities and found out that Airbnb and short-term rentals were banned in our neighborhood. She was fined heavily, with each violation costing $250. After that, she stopped parking her car in front of my house and ceased illegal renting. It seems she had to change her behavior to avoid bigger trouble. From this experience, I learned that sometimes staying silent isn't the best approach. Standing up for your own rights and the community, even over something as small as a parking spot, can lead to significant change. Moreover, sometimes conflicts that seem simple hide more complex secrets and truths than we expect. Story 5. The Sweet Revenge of a Bully Victim. I used to be bullied at school, and this story is about a time when I had the chance to get revenge while still keeping my dignity. Back in middle school, there was a classmate who liked to scare me and some of my friends. He was the type of bully who acted like a friend, but then bullied you in unexpected ways. Me and my friends often worried that he might hurt someone because of his aggressive and uncontrollable behavior. One day, he was living in a small storage room at his parents' house. That storage caught fire. Luckily, he wasn't hurt, but many of his belongings were damaged. I can't lie. I felt a little satisfaction when I heard the news. Karma. It seems life knows how to pay back what you give. But the story didn't end there. A few years later, I walked into a bar and ran into that old bully. At first, he didn't recognize me, but I remembered him clearly. When he asked if I remembered him, I smiled and said, "Would it help if I jumped down the toilet?" Begging. His face went pale, his eyes wide with terror. I stood up, towering over him, and he quickly offered to be friends if I promised not to do anything bad to him. It was surprising to see that the once bully was now begging me like that. The story gets funnier. Once at a wedding, I happened to see the same bully friend from middle school. I stood at the door as he was parking, looked him straight in the eye, said loudly, "Welcome back," and walked away with a satisfied smile. Honestly, those moments made me feel like some of the pain and hurt from back then was finally repaid. Through this story, I want to say everyone has a chance to change their own fate. Don't let bullies knock you down. Be strong, be resilient, and one day, karma will bring you justice. Story 6. When the mailman became the neighborhood nightmare. I live in a small neighborhood with about 20 houses each, with a spacious yard and a wide street. Everything was peaceful until a new mailman named Dave moved in. At first, I didn't pay much attention, but Dave quickly turned out to be the nightmare everyone wanted to avoid. He wasn't just rude to everyone, he also did unbelievable things. Most notably, he had the nasty habit of peeing in a water bottle. Whenever he was in a bad mood, he'd throw that bottle of urine into someone else's yard. I remember once telling him to just throw the bottle in the trash instead of annoying everyone. Instead of listening, he threw the bottle straight at me. Dave wasn't just some weird mailman, he was the son of Bob, the post office manager, and a close friend of the local police chief, Steve. Everyone knew Dave was trouble, but he got special treatment because of his family and connections. One summer day, the neighborhood kids were playing with water guns. One of them, Oren, was especially quick. By chance, Oren filled his water gun with Dave's urine bottle mixed with some Red Bull energy drink for an extra foul smell. When Dave got drenched by this water bomb, the whole neighborhood burst out laughing. Dave ran off to shower soaked and filthy while no one could stop laughing. After that, Bob and Police Chief Steve talked to Oren's parents. Everyone knew Oren hadn't done anything wrong, he was just giving a fair taste of his own medicine. Since then, Dave disappeared from the neighborhood, and the kids have an unforgettable memory of their sweetest revenge. This story shows me that even when bad people hurt us, justice will come in its own way, sometimes with a little help from karma and a good dose of creativity. Story 7. The tale of a special education teacher and a challenging student. I'm a special education teacher who started working in 2015 at an elementary school in the U.S. The job wasn't easy, especially when caring for students with dangerous behaviors. One such student was Jay, a kindergarten student I was assigned to support. Jay exhibited very hard-to-control behaviors, often running away from class and wandering the neighborhood. I worried about what might happen to him. I was determined to get a dedicated aide for Jay, someone who could closely monitor and assist him at all times. I spent weeks working with my supervisor, Mr. Carelli, preparing the paperwork and persuading the administration to approve a personal aide for Jay. Things seemed to be going smoothly, but unexpected difficulties arose. Mr. Carelli went silent for weeks, didn't respond to emails or answer calls. When the deadline came, he sent a single message saying my request wasn't approved because I hadn't proactively followed up. I was furious and felt betrayed. I gathered all emails, messages, and evidence proving I had done my utmost to contact him. I forwarded everything to higher management, Mr. Bailey, head of special education. Just days later, Mr. Carelli issued an official apology and was dismissed from his position. I felt justice was served, and more importantly, Jay finally got the proper support he needed. I believe this story serves as a lesson to everyone about persistence and speaking up against injustice, especially when it concerns protecting vulnerable children. Story 8. The Paperboy and the Sweet Justice. I live in a small neighborhood where everyone knows each other. Everything seemed peaceful until a new paperboy, Dave, showed up. Dave was unlike anyone I'd ever met. He often had a bad attitude and showed no respect for neighbors. The beautiful flowers in my yard and many others were trampled by him, angering everyone. But the worst part was Dave's strange habit. He carried a bottle of urine, and whenever he was in a bad mood, he'd throw that bottle into other people's yards. I honestly couldn't believe it. Everyone in the neighborhood knew Dave was the son of Bob, the head of the local post office, and a close friend of Police Chief Steve. So everything was swept under the rug. We raised him. He has a tough past, they said, and men will be men. What harm is a little roughness? One day, a group of kids in the area decided not to let Dave's behavior continue. They brought water guns for payback. One boy, Orrin, wielded a powerful water gun and concocted a plan. They filled the water gun with Dave's urine from the bottle, added a can of Red Bull to make it even more disgusting. When Orrin sprayed the attack on Dave, screams echoed throughout the neighborhood. Dave, now soaked and filthy with the nasty mixture, ran to a neighbor's house to clean up. Neighbors and I laughed heartily, feeling as if a burden had been lifted after all these years. However, the story didn't end there. Police Chief Steve and Bob quickly investigated, questioning Orrin and his family. But a single remark from Orrin's father changed everything. "Steve, didn't you say, 'Men will be men, what harm is a little roughness?'" From that day on, Dave vanished from the neighborhood. Orrin became a little hero in our eyes, and his birthday party that year was truly a memorable day. Story 9. My battle with the special education supervisor. I am a special education teacher, and my job is far from easy. One of the biggest challenges I ever faced was trying to get a dedicated aide for a primary school student named Jay, who exhibited dangerous behaviors. Jay was not an easy child. He often ran away from school and wandered around the neighborhood. I worried that one day he might get into serious trouble. I gathered enough evidence and data to convince my superiors that Jay needed a 1-1 aide to ensure his safety. Everything seemed to be going smoothly until I submitted the final paperwork to my supervisor, Mr. Carelli. From that moment on, everything went silent. He didn't reply to emails, didn't answer calls, and didn't respond to any correspondence. I kept calling, texting, and even enlisted the secretary's help, but to no avail. Time passed. The deadline came and went with no response. Then one day he sent me a curt message because I had not sent him the final version. The request for an aide was rejected. I was furious. It felt like all my hard work had been crushed due to one person's negligence. I decided not to let it go. I gathered all the evidence, emails, calls, all communications with Mr. Carrilli, and sent them to his superior, Mr. Bailey, the head of special education. Not long after, Mr. Carrilli sent me a formal apology letter. Mr. Bailey not only approved my request for an aid, but also assigned an emergency aid while the paperwork was processed. The climax of the story was that Mr. Carrilli was dismissed from his supervisory position. I'm not sure if it was solely because of me, but I believe the evidence I provided played a significant role. That day felt like a huge relief. I realized that persistence and determination had changed the life of a child and brought justice. This is a message to everyone fighting for what's right. Never give up, no matter who your opponent is or how powerful they may be. Story 10. My Sweet Payback Against an Arrogant Neighbor. I live in a small neighborhood where everyone knows each other. Each house has a spacious yard, and the street in front is wide enough for everyone to park comfortably without blocking anyone. But recently, something really annoyed me, and I want to share it. A neighbor at the far end of the street started parking her car right in front of my house every night and kept it there for days. At first, I thought maybe she had some temporary reason, but when it went on for too long, I started feeling uneasy. Not only that her car blocked the lawnmower crew's parking, preventing them from working. Deliveries got delayed because her car blocked the access. I decided to write a polite note reminding her that parking like that disturbed everyone and asked her to move her car back to her own driveway. The next day, the note disappeared, but the car was still there. Another neighbor warned me that she's a very difficult person and not easily intimidated. I didn't want to make a big deal, but then I decided to make a point. The next time she parked there, I parked my car right in that spot. She was not happy at all. Since then, she started hostile actions, insulting me through security cameras, leaving obscene notes on my car, and even making rude gestures when passing by my house. I started investigating and found out she had turned her house into an Airbnb for short-term rental. This seriously violated neighborhood rules which prohibit any short-term rentals. I contacted the local authorities and provided solid evidence. As a result, she was heavily fined, possibly tens of thousands of dollars in penalties. After that, she stopped parking in front of my house, and the neighborhood returned to its usual peaceful state. I feel very satisfied with this outcome. Sometimes you have to stand up and fight for your rights and your community, even over the smallest matters. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to this surprising and satisfying story. It's a clear reminder that even ordinary people, when standing up for their rightful rights, can truly make a difference. If you've ever had experiences with difficult neighbors or encountered outrageous stories in life, feel free to share them below so we can all discuss together. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any upcoming real-life stories full of drama, emotion, and laughter. See you in the next video on Reddit Echoes, where real-life stories are never boring.